Hi, I'm Carla Klopp. Today I'm going to show you how I design a quilt. I use electric quilt, or EQ8 as it's commonly known, and I just use basic draw and color features, so nothing really fancy. I open up a new quilt and then go to the block work table. And I use the drawing tools and just start to play. I first need to decide how many units are going to be in my block. So what kind of a grid? Is it 3 by 3, 4 by 4? So in this case, I decided on a 5 by 5. The size of the block, it doesn't matter. You can see it says 8, but I can resize that to anything. And I just draw my grid. So I've got my 5 by 5 squares and then draw lines. So I'm just drawing the units that are going to go into this block. And a few more lines. So it's getting a little complicated. You see I've got an hourglass in the corners. I have some half square triangles and some plain squares. Then I go to the color tab and I use the fabric tools and start coloring my block. I try to get some balance. And when I'm happy with the pattern, not the colors, that's going to be changed later, but I want to see how the design is starting to come out of the block. And then I've decided in this case I'm going to do a second block. So I'm going to alternate my two blocks. Again, I'm on the quilt work table. And then I go to the horizontal layout and how many blocks I'm going to make and position my first set of blocks. You can see that it's on the list of the blocks available for placing. The other blocks that you see, they come with the library. I don't have to use them, but it's sometimes a good place to start. And then I'm going to draw a second block. So back to drawing tools, the block work table, draw those lines and color them with using the same fabrics. And then position those alternate blocks. So I'm kind of liking that, but I'm not sure the colors work for me. I think there's too many fabrics. So I play with it for a little while and then turn it into a 4 fabric quilt that has 5 blocks across and 7 down. I've decided my blocks are going to be 10 inches. So they're 2.5 inch units unfinished, 2 inches once they're in the block. And that's a lot of blocks. And I'm doing this as an illustration to show how this goes into a pattern, but gives you a choice later to change the size. Put on some simple borders. I've removed the line so you get a better sense of how the quilt is going to look. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Now I need to pick the fabrics that I actually want to work with. Northcott is basically all that I sell in my shop. So I've looked at their upcoming designs and they have a collection called Whispering Pines, which is really, really beautiful. So I've decided to take some of those fabrics. So I go back into my quilt work table and now I replace the fabrics that I had with my new selection. So it looks kind of nice. It's only 4 fabrics. The quilt is 62 by 82. The blocks are 10 inches. There are 18 block A's and 17 block B's and 4 fabrics. When you look at the blocks up close, the fabrics kind of blend together. So I'm going to change, for the purpose of my pattern, I'm going to change it to fabrics that are a little easier to tell apart. And I'm going to export my graphics from EQ8 as well. So those are my 2 blocks in my solid colors. So when you break it down into its units, this is how you calculate how many of each color combination that you need. So my block A, you notice my corners, I originally had hourglass units, but I decided to change them to quarter square triangles, just in the coloring, so it's easy to tell. And so I know I'm going to need quarter square triangle, 70 left and 70 right units of one color combination, 34 of two other color combinations. Now that's a little interesting unit, the last two. It is a quarter square triangle, but my white is in both the small and large positions, so it's like a little floating triangle. I need some half square triangles, 108 of one, 180, and 68. I need some hourglass units for the centers of all the blocks. And I need some solid squares. Now remember, these units are 2.5 inches, so my squares are 2.5. So from that I can calculate, using the shortcut sheet techniques, how many strips of each color combination I need to make to create the sheets of each of the units. So to make the quarter square triangles in the left and right, this is my sheet. So I've got a solid white or beige, whatever you want to call it, and then my two color rows, and then another white, and then I flip my row, and then a white, and then I flip the other way. So I'm alternating the start of my two color row. That's what's going to give me my left and right units. I also need to make the ones that have the white in both positions, and that's what that sheet looks like. I need the hourglass units. There's my checkerboard that I cut up into hourglass. And I need the 3 half square triangle color combinations, and that's a whole sheet of all 3 of them. I just chop that up and my units are all made. So I've turned that into a pattern. It's called +1. If you're wondering about the name, I didn't decide to design a quilt that represented a +1. That's not how I work. I work by playing, find something I like, look at the quilt, and then say, what stands out? Oh, I see that plus symbol, so hey, I think I'll call it +1. So nothing overly creative. I'm not a person who plans my design. I play, and that's why I sometimes say I'm not really a designer. I'm a player, and I use the computer. So, but it's fun, and it doesn't matter how you do it. Now here's the size change. So the quilt, as you've seen so far, has 2.5 inch units, or 2 inch once they're in the quilt, and it measures 62 by 82. So it has a lot of pieces. Now I can take those blocks that are now 10-inch blocks and turn them into 20-inch blocks just by changing my unit size to 4.5 inch raw or 4-inch finished. So now I only have 12 blocks, 6 of each A and B. It now measures 85 by 104, so it's a queen size. Has a little more of a modern look, so I use a little more fabric, of course, but it's done exactly the same way. What changes are the number of strips in my units, the width of my strips, and how many rows, and therefore how many units I get out of each sheet. So we have the pattern for $5 online. It's a download. You get both sizes, so you get 2 patterns for the price of 1. We also have the binder, of course, $54.95. For those of you who don't know about my systems, this is all 8 methods in one collection with some practice patterns, some quilt patterns, some tips. Comes in binder format. We do have the download version of the shortcut sheets. It's a slightly condensed, just to keep the file size manageable, not all the patterns are in there. So just go to kitsbycarla.com. Thanks for listening, and don't be afraid to go out and try to design yourself. It's lots of fun.